And with that, we're off to a standing start with the opening plenary on Acchi Naukri. It is my pleasure to invite the panelists on stage. Please join me in welcoming Padma Bhushan Shri Ajai Chowdhry, co-founder of HCL. Mr. Chowdhry has played a leading role in establishing the electronics industry in India. He continues to serve on task forces and policy committees of influence. He has recently authored a book titled Just Inspire. Mr. Chowdhry, it's a pleasure to have you here. He will be joined by Ms. Sairee Chahal, who identifies as a serial entrepreneur, mom, and angel investor. She currently runs Sheroes, an online ecosystem for women offering support, entrepreneurial, and employment opportunities. Thank you, sir. We will also be joined by Mr. Pramod Bhasin, who is the operating partner at Kedara Capital, an India-focused private equity firm. Mr. Bhasin founded Genpact and led the expansion of the company across multiple countries. I know he had to beat a lot of traffic to be here on time. Thank you, sir. The panel will be moderated by Mr. Parikshit Luthra, who is the Chief of Bureau at CNBC TV 18 and heads the channel's team of journalists covering economic policy. Over to you, Parikshit.
Thank you so much, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. Early morning sessions we were discussing are always tough to keep the attention of the audience, but we promise you that this is going to be an excellent discussion. Now, we're going to be talking about Acchi Naukri, and we've come a long way since liberalization. We've come almost 34 years since then. We've seen GDP growth, we've seen growth in different sectors of the economy, but the job growth hasn't really picked up at the same pace, and this remains a concern. Every election, we speak about job growth, Acchi Naukri, good quality jobs, issues like underemployment, but somewhere we are not addressing the key issue on the table. There are so many facets to this problem, isn't it? You know, we have been seeing reports how 4.6 crore jobs were added in FY24 with a 6% growth rate. But at the same time, there were issues related to higher youth unemployment and underemployment. According to the economic survey, we would need 7.8 million non-farm jobs annually till 2030 to accommodate a growing workforce. Then you've got the challenge of AI. How will technology be a disruptor? Will it create more jobs? Will it create hurdles in job creation? All those are questions we need answers to. But I'm going to throw this open to our panel, and I'll begin with Sairee here. Sairee, you know, there was a time, and probably still is, when we think that getting a government job, no matter what government job it might be, may be the best thing on the table. Today, what would be your definition of Acchi Naukri? Because that's what our panel discussion is all about, and I'd like to begin with that thought.
Really great question. Thank you for having me here, and good to be here. Good morning, everyone. You know, I'd like to think that, yes, I think there is a government job overhang, but I also believe that this is an aspirational India. This is an India that wants to keep moving and keep getting better. And I think a lot of things that are in front of us, and I would say the biggest change that's happened since liberalization is that India is digital, we're online, we're constantly on our phones, and that's common to all of us, irrespective of who you are, what's your age. We are consuming internet content like never before, and what's that done to us is it's rewired us to constantly seek the new, you know. And I believe that what a lot of us are looking from our jobs is, of course, I think the usual suspects: financial stability, you know, safety, and ability to grow in a particular job. But I think we're also a nation that wants flexibility. We want to constantly align with where the world is growing. And I know we're going to talk about AI in a minute, but I think a lot of us are also entrepreneurial. So, and some of us are deeply conflicted about the stability that comes with the old, but also the excitement that comes with the new. And I guess a lot of us want a bit of both in where we are going. And of course, I know for a fact that a lot of us want jobs, but we also want our side hustles. We want to constantly seek new things, our hobbies, our passions, and that kind of is reflected in, growth of online communities, platforms, and of course, growth of social media. So yeah, I think we live in exciting times, and of course, there's a lot of brass tacks under both of these pillars: the traditional jobs, and of course, the new economy, self-employment.
Right. Thank you so much, Sairee, for these opening remarks. Sairee is someone who's running at least 3 businesses, Shiro's, where she's a board member now. She's moved away from a day-to-day role, and also Mahila Money. What she's trying to do is is support women entrepreneurs at the grassroots levels. Let me go across to Mr. Chowdhry now. Mr. Chowdhry, for the last 5 to 6 years, ever since COVID began, and this chorus became louder during the Ukraine-Russia war, that India needs to leverage the China plus one opportunity. Yes, the world's attention is on India right now, be it United States, be it Europe, be it Japan, but you can put money on the table, you can bring capacity, but where do you bring the right skill sets? Today, when we are speaking about Acchi Naukri, and if we were to ask you the difference between creating Naukri and Acchi Naukri, why do you think that this differentiation is important for the government's thinking for the long term, for the next 10 to 15 years?
Good morning, everybody. This whole issue of Naukri and Acchi Naukri differentiation is something that pretty much is realized now in the country very clearly. If you look at China plus one, it's been around not for the last 2 years, but it's been around for the last 8 to 10 years. But the reason why China plus one is a slogan that's being used is the fact that a lot of countries had put all their eggs in a single basket. And lots of companies and countries wanted to diversify away from China. And especially area of my interest, which is electronics, it's happened in a very, very big way. Now, over the last 8 to 10 years, Vietnam went and occupied that plus one. And the reason why Vietnam went and occupied that plus one and got large number of jobs created is the fact that they had created the right infrastructure to get all those investments to move to Vietnam. And Vietnam created major infrastructure to move components from China to Vietnam in 12 hours. And they created ports and highways to enable that. So logistics, infrastructure, incentives, all of that played a huge role in attracting movement from China to Vietnam. But what Vietnam got out of it is jobs, but not Acchi Naukri. Because all the jobs that are there are lower value addition jobs. They're all large amount of manufacturing jobs, but the value addition in Vietnam is quite low. And the reason for it is that Vietnam has great people for manufacturing and assembly, but they do not have people in engineering and design, which differentiates India from Vietnam. So therefore, India's opportunity lies in doing both. So in the last 4 to 5 years, we've seen phenomenal amount of movement of mobile manufacturing to India, and a lot of jobs have got created. But I saw a video of a Chinese on YouTube, and they were crying. They said 50,000 people from this whole area have gone away, and those jobs have gone to India. So, it's that kind of job that has moved in phase one. I think we now need to start taking, action on the next phase of creating more Acchi Naukri.
Mr. Chowdhry, the Prime Minister, in the Independence Day speech, he's spoken about the next mantra. He said, design in India, design for the world has to be our priority. He spoke about the gaming sector as to why can't Indian software engineers make games for the world. So he was basically, the point that he was trying to drive home across is that you need to look out for innovation and opportunities in untouched sectors. Now, is there an opportunity there for India? When you say design in India, design for the world, would you be creating a large number of high quality jobs, Acchi Naukri, as a result of that, if we exercise that thought well?
Definitely. Because again, the world is now looking at an alternative to China. Today, anybody who wants to get a product designed and made in China is priority one. But all of them are now looking at trusted sources. And COVID has actually created that issue. Because people no longer want to depend on China for anything. And therefore, the opportunities is for India to take that product space. So till now, we were looking at China plus one. I call it China plus two. Because we now need to become a product nation, where we design our own products, brand them, sell them in India, and then take them globally, which is really what China has done in a very, very big way. And I think this movement originally took place from US to Japan to Korea to Taiwan and China and Vietnam. But China to Vietnam, the movement of design has not taken place. That is where we should occupy that space. And I think Prime Minister is absolutely right. We must focus on being a product nation, a design nation, because we produce so many engineers every year. They don't have enough jobs. So today what's happening is that a lot of people go into computer science only. But there is jobs available in other engineering areas also if we become a product nation.
A lot of times companies end up saying that what they want are good mechanical engineers, for their operations as a basic skill set. Mr. Bhasin, thank you for joining us as well. When it comes to job creation, this was something that the Chief Economic Advisor had recently said. It was sometime before the elections, and it had created quite a stir as well, because he said that you cannot be expecting the government to keep creating jobs. Somewhere the corporate sector has to rise up to the opportunity. There is only this much that the government can do. Now, Mr. Bhasin, the question that we'd like to ask you, when we want to create jobs, of course, there are ways to do it. You can bring in incentives. You can give subsidized land, subsidized electricity to manufacturing companies. This would probably help them to create jobs in certain areas. But if we want to create those high-quality skilled jobs or Acchi Naukri, where does the government intervention need to come in? Where does it need to stop? And where does the private sector need to contribute? What has to be the right balance according to you?
Yes, good morning everyone. Pleasure to be here. I'm sorry I'm the one who caused the delay in the morning because I was loitering through eons of traffic, even though I'd left nice and early, but glad to be here. Thank you, and glad to be here with my fellow panelists who are wonderful people. So a couple of thoughts on your very complex, very important question. One, I think we must accept, and this is the elephant in the room, everywhere, is that we are producing, our demographic dividend is happening, and it takes decades and years to produce a lot of additional jobs. This is not going to happen overnight, and I think that is something we must absorb. I mean, Ajay has been the pioneer for electronics and his efforts that he's done. But, I'm sure Ajay will agree that if you want to create another 1 million, 2 million jobs, it's going to take us many years. It's not going to happen overnight. So one, we should be clear of that. Two, while manufacturing will happen, we must remember that India is also a services country. And there are many areas in the services sector where we could create plenty of new jobs if we learned how to focus. While the design segment may not be there in Vietnam, but the fact is they picked up on a certain trend and said, we will clear the path for it to create jobs. And whether those jobs are high level or low level, I think in India we need all jobs. I mean, you walk around and you see the number of people who are unemployed. We need jobs at all levels. So I think the more we can create at any level, the better off we are. But I think we need to be very clear on windows of opportunity, of migratory corridors, of transfer corridors, and create those in a very, very orchestrated, thoughtful manner. Because a general belief that we're going to be able to create a lot of design, etc., is not going to work. It's going to work for certain industries. And we should play to our strengths. We have a lot of engineers, we have a lot of electronics engineers, we have a lot of people in computer sciences. They've actually helped the IT services grow anyway already. But I think in tourism, in education, in healthcare, in many areas, we can produce industries which can absorb jobs much better. You know, India's tourism, I think, I'll get the numbers wrong, I think it's like 14 million international tourists. Paris gets twice. Not Paris, I think there's smaller cities which get twice that, right? So I think we have enormous potential. Look at our history, culture, food, arts, painting, everything. We should be the hotbed of tourism, and yet there is not even a single, for instance, a daily direct flight from Bombay to Agra. You know, you would imagine people coming to Bombay might want to go and see the Taj Mahal. We don't have a flight. So I think there are things that we can solve for tactically on the ground. The biggest intervention, though, if I may say, that we need to do is, and I think the earlier we start, the better, because I don't know why successive governments haven't done this, and it's not one government's fault at all, is the education system. Skills development, honestly, is not working the way it's designed today. It needs to be revamped very substantially. And our classes and schools and colleges need to throw up a level of graduate or student who is substantially better trained and educated than they are today, because it's very hard. I ran a skills development business. I lost a lot of money. I ran it for 5 years. It was a singular disaster, but I learned a lot out of it. The fact is, what we found out was that we were trying to improve the skills of students in about 12 to 14 to 16 to 18 weeks. That was trying to overcome 11 years of bad education in the school, where you couldn't add, you couldn't read that well, you didn't have the cognitive skills you needed to have. That's where I think we must make the change. There is no country in the world, and by the way, while I hear the China +1, and I think it's a fantastic opportunity for India, we must remember that the gap between China and us is very substantial at this point in time. There is no country in the world that has survived and done well without revamping its education system. And you can go back to Scotland, you know, you can go back to England, you can go back to Korea, Japan, Taiwan, China. They have revamped their education systems to produce a caliber of graduate student who's fantastic. That's where I think we have some of the most urgent need, as well as very pointed interventions in 7, 8, 10, 12, whatever areas. You know, Ajay has done something fantastic, which I hope he'll talk about. They picked 10 products that they felt could be built on scale and mass in India, right? And therefore focused on that. That focused on specific industries which have the potential to create massive jobs, I think would be fantastic. Last point I would just make. There is a massive opportunity to export talent from India. What do I mean by that? Demographics of many other countries require nurses, healthcare assistants, tuitions, truck drivers, plumbers, etc., all over the world. Japan needs it, America needs it, Scandinavia needs it, many countries need it. They're going, just like in the Middle East, they have used all the, just like England has used immigration from India into Africa and other parts. This is going to start happening more and more across the world. And I know a lot of people will feel it's a brain drain from out of India. Well, it isn't, because actually India has more than enough people, and I hope that can be another source of creating more jobs.
You raised 2 or 3 very important points. One about improving vocational training at the grassroots level, making sure digital innovation, digital education is, and somewhere I also feel that financial awareness and awareness about the financial sector must be a close part of our curriculum. But when you spoke about migration mobility agreements, we've seen a disturbing trend, Mr. Bhasin, over the past few months, which probably indicates a problem of unemployment as well. Indians going to Russia to fight for the Russian army, a large number of Indians going to countries like Thailand thinking that they're going to get jobs in BPOs or somewhere in some technology sector, or they'll be making some apps, and then their passports are seized and they end up getting caught up in Cambodia, in Chinese SEZs, and then they are threatened and made to work in phishing cases and cyber frauds against Indians as well. The reason why so many people are going, and they're going by the hundreds every year, and they're falling for such scams, is because there is some demand. What can we do to make sure that we get this right in terms of having the right mobility agreements? I know services agreements are part of certain FTA talks that we are having, but how can we streamline this more? Where can the Ministry of External Affairs come in? How can we get states on board as well? Because we know sometimes how states and center always come up with different policies and things can be complicated.
I think it's a very important pointer as to the desperation for jobs, which is the point you're making. By the way, that's also exemplified in India. If government posting in Gujarat, I think we saw the thing recently, I think posting for 20 jobs attracted like 8,000 applicants, and PhDs, doctorates, and everybody's applying for a government job. Many reasons to apply for a government job, of course, permanence, lots of things. We all know perhaps some of the perks that come with it, but certainly permanence and stability is the biggest one. People want that. I do hope there will be bigger institutions that will now be built. Companies like Ajay has built, companies like the one I had built, which are now at the forefront of exporting talent, exporting resources, which can do this in a far more orchestrated way with a far greater legitimacy, with better policy orientation, with better thought process, from combination with the government, our government and the foreign government. Our government is extremely supportive on these matters and really very helpful, and I hope we can leverage them. Will there be other areas that continue to happen because of the desperate nature of the work that is sought by these people? Imagine, how desperate are you for a job that you're willing to go and fight in a war? Just imagine how bad, what state are you in? But I think these will be very small, minor exceptions. I think the broad mass of companies that I hope can stand up and provide resources to the rest of the world is beginning to happen now and will begin to explode. I do think the government and the External Affairs Ministry will talk to other governments to stay alert on the scamsters that are happening, because that's a big issue. Cybercrime being promoted by many, many countries. But I think that we have other ways to solve for that, and hopefully it will remain a very small exception.
Right. Sairee, coming to you, and this is a point that both Mr. Chowdhry and Mr. Bhasin made, was about vocational training. With the clients that you work with, and Sairee works predominantly with women entrepreneurs, do you feel that we need to completely revamp our education system, make it more vocational training and skill focused as well? We saw in the budget about 1,000 ITIs being upgraded, the model skill loan scheme being upgraded to give loans up to 7.5 lakhs. How do you think are all these measures? And when it comes to the education system, what are we missing according to you?
Well, I think, as I reflect on our discussion and, from my own experience, I think the fundamental thing is that while everybody wants a Acchi Naukri, and I think the best way to have an Acchi Naukri is when you create one and you create many. And I somehow feel that I think the whole education system, infrastructure, internet, ports, taxes, I think the government's job here is to create a level playing field, and we hope it goes deeper with creating everything it needs to not only create employment but create a business. And the only way we can have an X factor, the multiplication of where we are, is when all of us move away from this mindset to say we will jump on any ship and go get a job. How about we think that we could all create, at least 5 jobs or 10 jobs? Even a small business, a small neighborhood boutique business ends up creating 5 to 10 jobs. And until we think that entrepreneurship and job creation are two different things, we are going to be struggling with this a long time. All of us are going to be seeking answers that don't exist. And, like what Pramod said, there's no way this is going to happen fast. The only way we can accelerate change is when all of us think as entrepreneurs. The truth is, India is a hustly entrepreneurial country. We figure out solutions for ourselves very, very quickly. But we still, I don't know why, maybe it's a legacy from the past, that we are still hoping that somebody will come in and give us a job. And going back to, what you said in vocational training, it's true, everything that the government creates will fall short because the markets move faster than the institutions, And I always say, and I think to learn a little bit from the power of the internet, the best learning institutions are also online today. The smartest people are actually not waiting for the government to create ITIs. They are actually, enrolling themselves and saying, hey, I'm going to get the fastest skills. For example, AI is going to create a lot of jobs. It's going to take away a lot of jobs, but it's also going to create a lot of new jobs as a space. I don't think people who want to work in the space are waiting for the government. Yes, there is a role for government to create the field, but I can't disassociate entrepreneurship from the process of job creation, because each of us who's seeking a job is also a potential job creator. And I think that's the opportunity. We work with women who run local neighborhood businesses. So think Sridevi in English. And I don't know if you guys remember the movie, but while she runs a home-based business, remember every time she has to go deliver, there is a van that comes, and that's a job at hand. There's a helper who's a job at hand. So every small business owner actually ends up creating 5 more jobs. If you create a small and medium business, you will create 50 more jobs. And I think that's really the power in all our hands. Everybody in this room is potentially a job creator more than a job seeker.
So interesting, Sairee. So give us one example which you found most inspiring in your career with working with women entrepreneurs, where you felt that a woman or a man for that matter was able to create a very Acchi Naukri for herself or himself.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll give you a case from last week. We financed a business last week. We gave a loan to a woman entrepreneur from Mysore, runs an engineering services business. So high value, so it's not a low-end business, it's a high value. It serves other manufacturing setups, and has a setup that creates engineering services for and employs more women. Interestingly, when there are more women who are entrepreneurs, we see they end up employing more women. It's just a little default setting. But we see this almost every day, So whether it is, cloud kitchen owners, whether it is neighborhood beauty parlors. In India, I think all of us are also moving with where the times are. And I think we need to multiply this. We need to multiply access to capital. We need to multiply access to basic, simple infrastructure that works. Setting up a small business should not be painful. And I think as more work happens in that segment, I think, I started my first business in 1999. You had to actually set up server rooms and put your chappals outside and put an AC inside that. Today you can go online like in an hour, right? You could buy a domain, you could set up a business, you could incorporate a company in 15, 20 days, and you're there, So there is definitely a lot of movement, and we also need to acknowledge where we are between our, India stack, digital payments, internet. everybody's said to be an entrepreneur, you know, and we shouldn't miss what's working for us in the, you know, while looking at what's not working for us. And yes, I think these are two different playbooks. There is a new age playbook, and there is, you know, I think the institutional playbook. There's a job that the government has, and we should in no way demand less of our government and our law and order and our parliament, but we should also demand equally more from us.
Great thoughts. You know, one point which has been coming time and again in discussions is the impact of AI. Mr. Chowdhry, would you like to weigh in on whether as a country where there is a lot of concern and there is a lot of uncertainty with the kind of impact AI will have on job creation, but what do you think should be the focus of the government, of the private sector to get the balance right, and also for students, entrepreneurs themselves to be future ready?
See, till now, if you look at any technology area, people needed to be just thinking that I need to do computer science and I need to get that kind of a job. But as we go forward, and as we have seen in the recent past also, literally every person in the management needs to know what tools are available to run the business. And therefore, I think AI is going to be that kind of a tool which literally everybody in any organization has to start understanding. So that's one part of what is happening. Earlier, everybody needed to understand IT. Now it's going beyond that, and everybody now needs to understand what is AI and what it can do for me and my business and my division in the company. So this is a very major change that people need to take care of. But what part of AI? And what is the impact of AI on jobs? So if we look at it, definitely in the IT sector, there will be an impact at the lower end jobs. There's no doubt about that. You just don't need to do coding anymore, right? But as we go up, there's many new jobs that are going to get created. And that is where the IT services industry is paying a lot of attention in reskilling people and ensuring that we get to the high-end AI jobs that are available out there. All larger companies are now getting huge amount of new AI jobs. So this is something that is parallelly happening. But as far as India is concerned, what should we do with AI is a question that I always ask myself. The AI is such a large subject. Where should India focus? And where is our actual intent should be in AI? And how can we make strategic intent in certain areas of AI where we are the world's best? That is what we need to identify. Everybody's struggling with that today. Should it be the center of AI? Should it be at the edge of AI? Where is that? So that's something that a few of us have been discussing. And there is a lot of discussion going on in the technology business today of where should we focus. Everybody talks about LLM. But you know, it's being done everywhere. What should we do? So that is where the issue of AI is there. And there's a great opportunity if we can actually find the right spot where our strategic intent lies.
Right. So I'm going to ask our fellow panelist, Mr. Bhasin, you've got so much of experience when it comes to the BPO sector. And India was always known as the back office of the world during the BPO boom. Keeping in mind examples from that time, what can India do to be a provider to the world when it comes to AI, generative AI? And recently, the World Economic Forum had said that generative AI is a place where India can take the lead.
So it's an interesting question, right? And I think I love Ajay's comment about how do you use it and where do you focus, one. But before that, all technology creates new jobs. Folks, go back to computers, go back to email, go back to coding, go back to textile machinery, go back to industrial. Technology creates jobs. When the computer came out, it's going to be the death of administration, it's going to be the death of workers, it's going to be the death of the... Listen, the news media... Maaf kariega.
So no problem, please.
The news media loves to create bad news. Oh, it's going to destroy job. Oh, it's going to do that. Oh, nonsense. For every new job that it destroys, it will create 3. So one, let's just embrace it and love it. We're in the hot seat in India because we have talent, unbelievable talent. So by the way, we are already at the forefront in many ways. It's being buried and hidden because the GCCs are grabbing all these people. The global capability centers that are currently being set up in India and fueling employment, they are absorbing them by the dozens. You know, when we first set up the BPO company, Genpact, I remember Raman Roy, who used to work for me, coined a great phrase, and he said, you know, trespassers will be recruited. And that's what's happening right now, is that in the AI world and other world, you have an AI degree, come. Now, by the way, I'm exaggerating because there's a dearth of jobs, there's a problem for many people looking for jobs, but you're going to get to that point where the world's going to come and look for talent in AI from India. The question, and I think I'm entirely with Ajay on this. The question is, of course, rather than just providing raw talent, what else should our talent be able to do? AI in the BPO sector will transform it. It will get rid of some jobs. It will add many new ones. That's been the story of BPO and tech sector for 35, 40
And this is what we heard when computers came in, that everybody thought that, you know, you're going to lose jobs.
You know, everybody, look, we used to run something called IT help desks. We started that business in India, right? And then, of course, every other IT company also jumped on it, but GE came to us and said, can you run IT help desk from India? So if you have a problem with your computer, you dial the number, and it reached our friendly, you know, neighbor in Hyderabad saying, with a false name, saying, I'm Mary, can I help you? You know, I'm not Mary at all, I'm whatever I am, I'm Sushmita, but I'm married to you. Can I help you? And what was it? Password reset. It was, this button is not working. It was that. All of that work has already gone. People don't use help desk that much anymore except for complicated assignments. But what has happened to that is those people have got trained on higher applications, Oracle, etc., Microsoft Cloud, They moved up the chain on help desk. The low-level help desk work has gone. So that work, which we started with, doesn't even exist. And all of it has been overtaken by much more higher value, more complex, better work for better trained people, for the same people being trained. This will happen. There will be some displacement, but we should not fear it. The key, though, is, and I really believe, I think this is where we are missing out in India, is we must focus on 10, 15 areas and say, this is where we're going to build real expertise. So if you think about electric vehicles and mobility, personally, I never think about Tesla. It's China. They are so far ahead of this. If you think about drones, 80% of all drones are made by DJI in Shenzhen, right? We have many opportunities, actually, and pioneers like Ajay, I keep talking about him, he'll talk about himself one of these days, is that there are things we could make, laptops we could make, many other electronic machinery, and just focus in on that. And focus in on where can we use AI for the world. We could send consulting engineers. I mean, literally, I had a meeting yesterday with a bunch of people saying, why aren't we building an AI consulting engineering company for the rest of the world? That's what we're talking about, right? Why aren't we building an AI-led BPO business? Why aren't we leading an AI-led applications business? Why aren't we... There are so many opportunities. I think this is actually a great time, and we have the demographics and we have the talent pool that we should go and grab that. By the way, the government can help really, in my view, by training, making sure training subsidies and others are available. You know, how did we get to China? Sorry to carry on. How did we get to China? Budapest, Guatemala, Colombia, Brazil, anyway. Is all of them said, for the number of people you employ, China was very clear in Dalian, they said, we'll give you $2,000 per employee you employ for more than 1 year. For the training you need to give them. Done. We took it very happily. Now, we didn't go there for the training money, but it helps educate the people in the areas that we need. Hungary did the same thing, Romania did the same thing, all these countries are. Those are areas where perhaps we could help industry in a very targeted fashion, saying, hey, if you're going to employ employees in these areas, you need to provide them training. Here's the incentive for you to do that faster and better. No one's going to start just because of the incentive. That's a mistake we often make. We give an incentive and think suddenly people are going to come in. No, they won't. But it will help if you can provide them that incentive in a very targeted, very specific manner in areas where we can be the best in the world. And I think there are tons of such areas where we could do that.
So just like PLI had about 15 sectors which we had chosen for manufacturing, similarly for the AI push, we can identify the sectors.
And services.
Yeah, and services. You know, when it, again, the question coming back to the BPO sector, we had a very large, educated, English-speaking workforce that we could leverage. Now, for those who are non-AI, how do we leverage that community better for the future? Would it be in the services sector, or what would be your idea be there?
Sorry, what do you mean who are not AI?
Basically, who are not trained
Yes.
in AI,
Yes.
who don't have those skills as yet, who may not be working in the manufacturing sector, who are making a transition.
Yes, I think the transition is not as difficult as it needs to be. But I go back to the vocational skills piece. If we can expand that substantially to include digital skills, AI skills, and other skills. Now, you can't teach AI in a matter of, 2-3 weeks sitting there. But what you can teach is people how to leverage it, how to use it. It's like, look, the example I love is this stupid machine all of us carry around, right? Which we're all addicted to. It doesn't come with an instruction manual for anyone. Everybody in India has learned how to use it. It doesn't matter literate, illiterate, how good they are, how bad they all know how to use it. They've all figured it out. So I think AI will be that ubiquitous, by the way. It's all on your phones. I don't know how many of you use it every day. I tend to use it almost every day now. It's all there. I think people will figure this out also. We can add to that by training them appropriately, by providing lots of programs in all the ITIs to say, this is what AI do. But AI is not going to go down to that level yet. We don't need it to. We just need to create jobs for these people at a different level. We need jobs at all levels. I'm not sure that AI necessarily needs to reach tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 towns at that level for job creation. It does for providing services and facilities, which otherwise we could never have done.
Right. Mr. Chowdhry, just before the discussion began on stage, we were speaking about the huge potential of India's tourism sector. We have seen a lot of job growth being concentrated in the construction sector, but how do you think we can leverage the opportunity in tourism much better?
I would say there are probably 40, 50 great locations in India where some of them I have been to and some of them I aspire to go. I still have that list somewhere. And therefore, we have really not done justice to creating the infrastructure for people to go there and enjoy themselves. I live in Goa for 4 months a year. And I always dreamed that Goa could have been Singapore. But it isn't. The reason is we have not done anything beyond putting roads. We don't think, how do we get tourists to come here? How do they have no hassle when they get off the aircraft and just go straight to the hotel and enjoy themselves? That whole process is very painful. And it is not as painful in Goa, but you try and look at Pachmadi, or you look at any of those second-tier brilliant locations which you will find, where it's very painful to go there. So this is something that we need to sort out. And if we can't just stay at slogan level, incredible India. That slogan has actually taken us to make us think that we have really achieved it. We have not. We just need to go much below that. And that is there in literally everything that I see. When I ran a manufacturing facility for 30 years, it's very painful to run manufacturing in this country. Because there are pinpricks every day. So this whole issue of looking at end-to-end is not in our minds at all. We just say, these numbers will happen because we have great locations. It's not going to happen. And as he rightly said, can you fly from Bombay to the Taj? You can't. So, these basics have not been looked at.
And they will, of course, lead to job creation as well. Good points, and great to hear that, sir. Sairee, coming to you, and we must talk about the issue of gig economy. And you've been speaking about how so many of us are either thinking about a side hustle or already have 2 or 3 side hustles. What are some of the gaps that you see in how the entire gig model is looked at in the country, some of the problems that gig workers face as per your experience?
I think one of the hardest challenges we as a country face is that we still feel a job is a 9 to 5 government job that makes me work 22 days a month and that's it, right? I think the world has changed, our pace has changed, pace of change has accelerated, and believe me, whatever jobs we get, whatever jobs we create, they're going to change every 5 years. The world is changing, and even with the pace of change in technology. And what that means is that we need to also accept and recognize growth of self-employed gig workers. You know, all of us will be in that position. Even if you run a company, at some point you will be in that consultant phase in your life. And I think all of us have been in that phase. But those are segments that are not formalized or recognized at all. You know, and if you sort of, I know we have gig economy companies come up, whether it's an Urban Clap or it's a Meesho or the other platforms, they're just a very small tip of the iceberg. They're just brand names that have grown bigger, but these economies exist in a real way. I mean, all of us know, neighborhood service providers, the cupcake maker, the person who probably runs a neighborhood boutique, the person who's a neighborhood malish wali auntie, the neighborhood yoga teacher, the tuition teacher.
Your urban clap.
Yes, yes. I think this exists in a real way, but and these are all jobs. These are services rendered, income generated, GDP increased, but we haven't yet organized or formalized them. For example, if you run a small tailoring boutique today, or you run a neighborhood boutique or a beauty parlor, and we all go to somebody who does the blouse fitting and sells you that next chicken curry suit, but also offers the next service, because this is the informal economy. If you want a loan for a business like that today, there is no category of loans in the entire financial services segment. You either get a personal loan, which means, it's a consumption loan, or you get an SME loan. There is no informal sector self-employed loan in this country. And guess what? At least 200 million people are self-employed in the informal sector. So I think these are all opportunities for us to take both to policy, but also problems to solve for us.
What about the gender divide? Because year after year, there are reports when it comes to the gender divide, lack of access of women to jobs, and lack of awareness among women about high quality jobs that are available.
Absolutely. Look, I think we have one of the lowest women in workforce numbers, the formal numbers, but our informal numbers are not so bad. I mean, and that is actually, this scenario is deeply changing thanks to digitizations, thanks to payments. I think COVID accelerated a lot of that, which means that a lot of women may never make it to an office job, but they have a chance at what I call a remote back-end AI services job. They have a chance at being a self-employed gig worker. They also have a chance at actually what I call a deep tech worker. I know there are, a lot of jobs in metros, in the hubs, but India lives everywhere. We are very deeply spread. So a lot of self-employed deep tech professionals can emerge, and that's the difference between what we say a worker and talent. I think we all want to be talent because talent is sought after, and that's where the growing opportunity is. It is. We have to look at our informal segments and go deeper to say what are the opportunities. For example, Pramod spoke about tourism. you know, every city can produce, for example, the city guides, the digital sathis, the native experience hosts. I think, and these are not dissociated. These are experiences to be created. You source on digital, but you deliver offline. I think those are sort of, I know Bombay is doing a lot of these supper evenings and experiences as a segment, but you know, there's no reason why it can't happen, you know, in Panchmari, for example.
Okay, so let's just take closing remarks now. We're running out of time. Mr. Chowdhry, I would begin with you. You know, we don't have accurate, reliable jobs data. But, you know, if as a country we want to deliver well on skilled jobs and create Acchi Naukri, what is the benchmark that the government needs to create when it comes to job creation? Because election after election we hear कि नौकरियां नहीं हैं, लोग बेरोजगार हैं, but somewhere as a country, how do we make sure that we bring some level of benchmark to the exercise of judging where we are as a country when it comes to job creation?
See, in our country, we only plan election to election. Correct? So therefore, somebody has to sit down and say, what is India going to be 25 years later? So few of us got together about a year and a half ago, and we said, what should India do for the next 25 years? Where should we focus? And we very clearly came to the conclusion that we've done very well in services. We should continue to grow services and add more capability in services and go global everywhere. And as Pramod said, there's great opportunity for people to get jobs anywhere in the world if you have the skills. But we now need to look from services to being a product nation. And that is where I was talking about design, etc. earlier. We now need to look at, can we be among the top 5 in the world as a country and as a company 25 years from now? And we work backwards from there and see which areas we should focus on. So we identified close to 10, 11 areas where we should focus on. We could be the world leader in two-wheeler EVs. We could be the world leader in telecom. We could be world leader in products like chips, designed and made in India. We could be world leader in drones, space tech. So we identified 11 areas like this where we believe we now need to bet on them. And if we bet on them, then maybe out of those 10, 11, 4 we will make it happen. And if those 4 happen and we become a circle of 5, top 5 in the world, I think we would have created phenomenal jobs in this country, which are totally different from what we are doing today. Look at a drone, just take the drone example which Pramod brought up. Today, there's a ban on drones from China, but it still comes in surreptitiously.
It'll go to Philippines or
No,
Indonesia.
it just comes in. So now what is happening is that what we are doing in India is that we've created a drone industry. But if you look at the depth in the drone industry, it's zero. All that we do is assemble in India. All components come from China. So therefore, there's an opportunity for us. And the same thing is true for two-wheeler EVs. There's an opportunity for us to be the motor company of the world, develop the best motors in the world. Just do one thing like that within those components. So I think that's where the opportunities and that is where the large number of high-value jobs can be created. And if we start thinking like that, things can happen. And good news is the government is listening.
The government is listening because they are very focused on the 2047 vision. And I think the Prime Minister's speech on Independence Day was all about the Viksit Bharat vision. Mr. Bhasin, when we're talking about becoming a developed country by 2047, what is the Acchi Naukri vision that we should have? As we spoke to all our panelists, and the sense one gets is that Acchi Naukri means a Naukri of dignity, reasonably well-paying and reasonably good growth opportunities. But when we think about 2047 vision, what is the Acchi Naukri vision that you'd like to leave our audience with?
My vision would be, I guess, in 3 or 4 key areas. The biggest one to me will be a far better skilled, educated employee workforce of India across the board. Without that, Acchi Naukri hone nahi lagi. Very clear. Skills in whatever sector it may be, really nicely developed, well thought through, well trained. Go to Brazil. See what they've done in the skills area. Fantastic institutions, right? And you have examples like this across the world. Germany, of course, thrives on apprenticeship. So you don't even have to create new things. You can go and copy and find examples around the world which are incredibly successful. I think that's one. Two, Sairee didn't talk about it. Sairee talked about it, but I would like to emphasize this. Increase participation of women in the labor force. We are amongst the lowest in the world at 24%. Bangladesh is at 42. And the reasons are not just that women don't want to work. It's the environment for women to work. How do they get to work? Where do they get to do? What is the public transportation available? How do they feel? How secure they feel? How safe they are? What do they do with their children? What are the facilities around them? Give women the freedom of the cities that men have. Fight for that. To me, that is an elephant in the room. Read the news today in any newspaper. How devastating it is. How astonishing it must feel for a woman to know how vulnerable she is. Give them the freedom of the cities and our states. I think that will help. And the last one I would say in this vision that we paint, we can be exactly what Ajai said. We can be the best in the world at 20, 30 different things where we produce some of the best products, some of the greatest innovations, some of the great startups. We are, most tech companies in the US are run by Indians. It's an astonishing statement. Have a look. In the top 10 companies, they're all Indians. Think about that, right? What's happened? Why aren't we taking that lead here? I wish we could do that. But one point I would just make. Ease of doing business in India is not getting easier, it's getting worse. Recently, there's been some talk about, getting an income tax clearance before you fly out of India. There are things like that happen. It'll go away. I think the government is being very responsive, very good. But these are little hurdles along the way. They don't help. Ease of doing business, whether it applies to tourism, education, manufacturing, whatever it is, we need to improve by a factor of 10 times, not incrementally by a little bit, by a factor of 10 times, and we have to all embrace that.
Right. No, it's a holistic approach, isn't it? And finally, Sairee, as a country and a lot of professionals, we are, I think as a country and historically, slightly stuck in the mindset कि वो यार पूरा 9 to 5 वाला job होना चाहिए, एक company के साथ रहो, कोई problem नहीं है. But how does one shrug off that mindset and think out of the box? And especially, what would be your advice to women?
Actually, not just to women. I think when I think of this whole story, I think of it as a pyramid, actually. I think at the base is just the basics, right? What the government needs to put in place, our infrastructure, our electricity, our internet, our ease of doing business, but also our duty as citizens. I think none of this is enforceable, accountable, if we are not participating in it, and I know forums like this are helpful. And I think second is, the truth is, we also need segmentation of jobs in some ways. Today we paint all policy with the same brush, but the truth is, there is the basic stuff. For example, India got primary enrollment right. For the first time, most Indians, and 95% Indians are now at least enrolling in primary education. This was a goal that was hard to achieve 30 years ago, but here we are. But now comes the next challenge to say, how do we put all these people who've gotten into schools into employable workforce? So there is the mass which needs to be the services sector, the back end of the world, getting people to their first job, getting people into employment, and maybe it won't be very optimal. And then, of course, creating an aspirational pyramid which says that's where all the good stuff is, right? The deep tech, the large companies, the hubs, the innovation, that's where workers become talent. And I think all of us want to make that journey from being workers to being talent. And I think it's all connected. But I do believe that the opportunity for us is one to participate vehemently, but what looks like Acchi Naukri is actually Acchi entrepreneurship, you know, and there are enough tools at our disposal. I have a daughter who's 17. I don't think her idea of her career is the same as what, you know, what we had. And I think all of us are by default entrepreneurs from where we stand today in history.
Thank you so much, Sairee, Mr. Chowdhry, Mr. Bhasin. It's been a fantastic discussion, lots to think about. Clearly, we need to focus more on empowering women in the workforce. We need to make sure that our education system is future ready when it comes to vocational training, skill development, and also AI ready as well. And somewhere we need a clear government plan and vision for this as well. Thank you once again to all our panelists, and thank you for our audience for listening in.
Thank you. Thank you, Parikshit.
Thank you, Parikshit. Thank you all for joining this session and for a rousing discussion. We will now take a 10-minute break, and on the other side of the break, we hope to welcome Shri Jayant Chowdhry, Minister for Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. See you in 10 minutes.